Nice to see you all. They say Thursday is the new Friday, so thanks for coming in on the weekend here. So I do want to thank you all for joining us today for the launch of the Safe Housing Pilot, and I'm proud to join all of you in support of this important gender-based violence intervention program. As some of you may know, I was an assistant state's attorney here for 7 years. My first assignment actually was at 555 West Harrison, the domestic violence courthouse. And in that role, I saw firsthand how the network supports survivors who are going through incredibly difficult periods in their lives, and they supported them both in the courtroom as well as through supporting the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline. And that's why I could say unequivocally that this pilot is really an important step by the city to help survivors of gender-based violence connect with safe housing. And I really want to thank the mayor and Commissioner Castaneda for their leadership to address a problem that really requires collaboration across governments. And also I am grateful for the leadership of the network for doing everything they can to advocate for survivors, which, like I said, I've seen firsthand. So it is my honor to introduce Jacqueline Zarak-Koryath, who is the Director of Housing Advocacy at the network, to share more about the exciting Safe Housing Pilot. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jacqueline Koryath, and I'm the Director of Housing Advocacy at the network, advocating against domestic violence. The network is a membership organization dedicated to improving the lives of those impacted by gender-based violence through education, public policy, and advocacy, and connecting community members with resources and direct service providers. We support survivors facing housing instability in many ways, including connecting them to shelter through our 24/7 statewide domestic violence hotline, conducting assessments for rapid rehousing, providing emergency cash or rental assistance, defending against unlawful evictions or discrimination, and advocating for changes in state and federal housing policy. Safe housing is an essential safety solution for survivors experiencing gender-based violence, and yet survivors are often forced to choose between their safety and their affordable housing. In our work, we are routinely connected to these survivors who live in site-based affordable housing and are unable to move with their subsidy after they have experienced gender-based violence. When survivors are unable to move out of the only housing they can afford, perpetrators have opportunities to inflict further violence and harm, and survivors spend every day simply trying to survive. Survivors we have worked with have lost their employment, had their homes destroyed, and have been hospitalized while waiting for safe housing. Some survivors have also lost family members. These losses are tragic, and the Safe Pilot was created to prevent them from happening. With the support of Michael Reese Health Trust and Crown Family Philanthropies and the partnership of Family Rescue and the Department of Housing, the Safe Pilot creates safe pathways that allow survivors in affordable housing to flee gender-based violence without losing their subsidy. Through the Safe Pilot, survivors living in DOH-funded apartments will be able to access low-barrier support to move by directly calling Family Rescue or the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline. Survivors referred to the pilot will work with Family Rescue to receive individual support such as legal advocacy, counseling, and access to benefits and resources, and will identify their safety needs for relocation. For after hours and emergencies, the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline will be available, as it always has been, for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with assistance in over 240 languages. DOH-funded housing providers are an essential partner in creating safe communities, and they will also refer survivors directly to the Safe Pilot. The network will work with housing providers to better understand and implement housing protections under the Violence Against Women Act so that survivors know what their rights are and how to access them. Housing providers involved with the pilot will also work with the network to identify availabilities within their affordable housing portfolio so that survivors can be matched to them based on their safety needs. The Safe Pilot fills a gap in our affordable housing system by creating a safety net for survivors to retain their DOH-funded housing subsidy when they need to flee gender-based violence. The network looks forward to working on this innovative pilot and facilitating pathways to safety for survivors living in affordable housing. Thank you to the Mayor, the Department of Housing, the Commissioner, Family Rescue, Michael Reese, and Crown for supporting this life-saving work. And I am very happy to introduce Mayor Brandon Johnson.
Wow, thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for your leadership, and good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Okay, all right. I was just making sure it was the right time of day. Let me begin by expressing my gratitude for all of the alders that are here today, Conway and Alder Lee and Taylor. Thank all of you for your leadership. To our Department of Housing Commissioner Lisette Castaneda, DFSS Acting Commissioner Mara McCauley, members of the city's Gender-Based Violence Working Group, thank you for being here, and all of our community partners, particularly from Michael Reese Foundation, Family Rescue, and the network. Thank you for your commitment to such a critical issue. Our collaboration has led to this day where we can launch the SAFE pilot program and provide survivors fleeing gender-based violence with safe housing. The Safe Housing Pilot Program was developed from my administration's Violence Prevention and Intervention Plan, the People's Plan for Community Safety, in collaboration with the Chicago Department of Housing. And with that, I'm also grateful for our Deputy Mayor, Community Safety, Deputy Mayor Gary Gatewood. The People's Plan takes a people-based and place-based approach to eradicating the root causes of harm through intentional investments and collaboration with nonprofits, city, county, and state partners. Our place-based investments range from developing affordable housing to removing barriers to public spaces and improving the efficiency in which we address infrastructure requests. Our people-based investments are rooted in mental and physical health, education, as demonstrated today, services for victims and survivors. Community safety is a multifaceted topic. When we talk about community safety, we need to include discussions about gender-based violence. We also know that this is a moment of acute need for survivors and gender-based violence in our city. Cases of gender-based violence are rising, while forms of violent crime like homicides, shootings, incidents, and shooting victims are at their lowest numbers since 2019. Gender-based violence is a pervasive issue that affects all of our 77 communities. And though we recognize it disproportionately, it's certainly felt in the Black, Latinx community. Indigenous women have historically been disinvested in as a whole. It has been my focus to hear directly from survivors of gender-based violence. And in my conversations, I've heard repeatedly that emergency housing is a necessity for those who are fleeing violence in their home. We know that our investments in increasing access to emergency housing for survivors of gender-based violence will enable long-term stability for survivors and their entire families. And that is how the People's Plan for Community Safety ensures that all Chicago residents have the opportunity to thrive and in turn contribute to safer communities. With continued targeted investments as part of the People's Plan for Community Safety, along with our full force of government, I am confident that we will see vibrant and safe communities. My administration will continue to convene the stakeholders across the city, county, and the state, all levels of government, with community working strategically to pull together all of our resources, our ideas, and best practices to serve all of Chicagoans. In closing, I want to again express my thanks to all of the city leaders that are here today, and particularly those who are our city council members, our partners who are focused on gender-based violence response and determined to foster safer communities. I look forward to the work ahead, and thank you all for your great work. And with that, it's my privilege to bring to the podium Department of Housing Commissioner, Ms. Lisette Castaneda.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you all, and thank you, Mayor Johnston, for your commitment to building a safer and more just Chicago. Today marks an important milestone in that vision with the launch of the Safe Transfer Pilot Program, short-term assistance for emergency transfer. Safe Transfer is more than just a pilot. It is a promise that survivors of gender-based violence will no longer be forced to choose between staying in harm's way and risking their housing stability. At the Department of Housing, we believe that safe, affordable housing is a human right. That's why this program is so important to our work. SAFE fills a critical gap in our housing system, a gap that has left too many survivors trapped, isolated, and without options. Our department invests in housing as a pathway to equity and opportunity. but equity means little if it does not account for lived experience. This initiative also reflects our responsibility to ensure that affordable housing we fund is responsive to the real-life needs of its residents. We cannot just say that we are building a just housing system if survivors in our city-supported properties do not have a clear, trauma-informed pathway to safety. The Safe Transfer Pilot Program represents a crucial evolution of that mission. Survivors of gender-based violence are mothers, workers, students, and neighbors whose well-being directly impacts the health and resilience of our communities. Too often, low-income families are left without choices when emergencies arise, particularly when those emergencies involve intimate partner violence. SAFE helps break down systemic barriers that have historically left survivors feeling isolated and unsupported. It creates a lifeline to safety that does not require survivors to start over from scratch while navigating confusing, life-threatening situations. This kind of support is the difference between surviving and thriving. And let's be clear, when we protect the most vulnerable among us, all of Chicago benefits. Safer housing means fewer families disrupted by trauma, less strain on emergency shelters, and stronger neighborhoods built on trust and stability. SAFE allows us to respond swiftly to crises while preventing long-term displacement. It is a smart, compassionate investment that reflects the values of this administration and the direction our city is moving towards solutions that are people-centered and equitable. By partnering with Crown Family Philanthropies and the Michael Reese Health Trust, we are making sure this work is done thoughtfully, with real-time learning, accountability, and survivor leadership at the center. We are deeply grateful to the remarkable support of all of our partners, the tireless efforts of the Department of Housing team, the commitment of employees and volunteers at the network advocating against domestic violence, Family Rescue, Four Corners Global Consulting Group, and of course, the Mayor's Office for Community Safety. I'd like to ask each team that brought this initiative to life to stand for us to give them a huge round of applause. This pilot is more than just a program. It marks a shift in how we define safety in housing, reflects a deeper alignment with our shared values, and affirms our investment in people's dignity. This is what it means to build not just homes, but hope, and create a true haven in our community. Thank you. Up next, I would like to introduce the 11th Ward Alderwoman, Nicole Lee.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Ooh, I like that response. I've only seen that done by Cook County President Quinkle, and it worked. I mean, everybody says good afternoon, so we're going to keep that in practice, Mayor. I'm so grateful to be here today with all of you for the launch of this Safe Transfer Pilot. As the chair of the Women's Caucus of the Council, it's an issue that is very close to home for all of us. There's not a corner of this city where domestic violence does not have a presence. So thank you again to all of you who made this pilot possible, making it easier for domestic violence victims within our public housing system to move homes without risking eviction or losing their housing assistance. You know, in this current fiscal environment, getting funding for anything is incredibly hard. So we're so grateful to Michael Reese and the Crown Family Charities for making this possible for us to ensure that people, victims of domestic violence, have the resources that they need and they don't have to worry about where they're going to safely lay their heads at night as they're fleeing from their abusers. Thank you as well to the network and Family Rescue. I'm glad that you've been entrusted with the implementation of this program. And we're not just talking about numbers here, we're talking about real people. And just in the last couple of weeks, I've unfortunately had the occasion to try to provide some assistance to a constituent who's in this exact situation right now, where her abuser knows where she lives, and she's trying to get rehoused, and it's not an easy process. So we were grateful to be connected with this pilot and have already connected her with the network, and equally as important, if not more, is that this is not just about rapid rehousing. This is about the wraparound services that come with this. You can't just do one and not worry about the other. And when we have the opportunity to provide comprehensive services, we have a much better opportunity to help people get back on their feet. So thank you for all that you're doing, each and every one of you who stood earlier, and those of us that are around the room. We have to continue to do whatever we can to ensure that victims of gender-based and domestic violence have the resources that they need to not just survive, but thrive. Thank you. I'd like to thank you. I'd like to introduce next Jennifer Rosenkrantz from the Michael Reese Foundation, Domestic Violence Program Director.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Rosenkrantz, Program Director for Domestic Violence with the Michael Reese Health Trust. Michael Reese is a public foundation devoted to ensuring all Chicagoans have the resources needed to lead healthy lives. We work with public and private partners across our city to advance community-driven ideas and opportunities to advance health equity. And we are proud supporters of the Safe Housing Pilot Program. At Michael Reese, we believe that stable housing is foundational for health and that all families deserve a safe place to call home, free from violence and fear. When a home becomes unsafe due to domestic violence, we have a responsibility to survivors and their children to get them to a safe place with the support they need as quickly as possible. And we know that's not happening right now, as survivors with housing subsidies are left without a clear process on how to transfer to a safe home. This means survivors are forced to remain in unsafe homes and lose their home entirely, contributing to our unacceptable rates of homelessness for women, children, and families who have experienced domestic violence. At Michael Reese, preventing domestic violence and ending homelessness are cornerstones of our work. And with this initiative, we are helping tackle both of these critical challenges. The Safe Housing Pilot Project will cut through the bureaucracy and rapidly move survivors to safe housing with the wraparound support that they need. This will keep more survivors safe, give them the support and space they need to become independent, thriving, and help our children grow up in healthy homes. This will make a real difference in the lives of Chicago families. But our work to prevent domestic violence cannot end there. At Michael Reese, we are committed to addressing domestic violence from all sides, keeping survivors safe, preventing violence from occurring or reoccurring, and building healthier families. Later this summer, we look forward to announcing new actions that will build on today's announcements and further our work to prevent domestic violence. Backed by a comprehensive research study, our organization plans to take aggressive action to interrupt violence and end cycles of abuse. More to come, but we are grateful to our philanthropic partners, the City of Chicago, particularly the Department of Housing, the Network, and Family Rescue for this critical step today, and look forward to our continued work together to keep families safe. And now I will turn the podium over to Latrice Sanders, Family Rescue Chief Operating Officer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I'm Latrice Sanders. I'm the Chief Operations Officer at Family Rescue. Since 1981, Family Rescue has been dedicated to eliminating domestic violence in the Chicago community by providing comprehensive support services. We do this by providing 5 wraparound programs: an emergency shelter, transitional and rapid rehousing, community outreach, and legal advocacy. Family Rescue's philosophy recognizes that housing and safety from gender-based violence are critically linked. During our over 40 years of providing advocacy services, we've come to recognize that one of the most significant barriers survivors encounter when leaving an abusive relationship is finding and maintaining safe and affordable housing. This is why we are extremely excited to be a part of the SAFE Pilot Program alongside the Network, Four Corners, and the City of Chicago. The SAFE Pilot Program will help ensure that survivors housed within the Department of Housing are no longer forced to choose between their housing and their safety. The program will assist in facilitating a safe transfer connecting survivors to trauma-informed case management, and providing education and assistance to property managers and the community about survivors' housing rights and domestic violence. Family Rescue's role will be an advocate specialist who will be available to help survivors through every step of the transfer process and beyond, ensuring that we are receiving the emotional support and holistic services needed to achieve safety as defined by the survivor. The advocate specialist will support the survivor in developing a safety plan, connecting them with immediate resources, and providing long-term case management support throughout their transfer and beyond. They will be available to help them think through what a safe move will look like and act as a liaison between them and our partners when needed. Our funding partners have also generously provided funding for emergency hotel rooms when it's unsafe for a survivor to stay in their unit and domestic violence shelters are full, an all too common scenario. This wouldn't have been possible without the funding partners for this project. We thank them for believing in a project that's innovative and survivor-centered. We know this project is a team effort, and we're thrilled to be a part of a team dedicated to creating a society free of domestic violence. Thank you. And it is my pleasure to reintroduce Mayor Johnson.
Thank you. With that, we'll take questions.
Okay, so we don't have a lot of time, so we're going to try to get everyone a question. Okay. We're going to start with on-topic questions. Anyone have an on-topic? Craig, you have one too? You want to start? All right.
I just wanted to find out, well, first off, how much are the funding partners committing to this, and also how much is this costing the city, and where is that money coming from?
Sure. Commissioner?
We have, so the City of Chicago is not directly putting any money aside for this just yet. It is a pilot program, and so we're really excited to be able to partner with Philanthropy for the $3 million that we will be using for the project, for the pilot of it.
One of the things that I just can add, and we'll make sure we get those numbers to you, is that closing out last year's budget, we did add, I believe, an additional $2 million towards domestic violence. And this is something that I know all of the alders that are with me today, Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor has been, really on the forefront of illuminating the harm and the pain and the concentration, particularly with Black women. So this is an important endeavor and a step forward towards making sure that the voices that are close to the pain, that have spoken to me directly and to all of us who are participating in this effort, that people want help. They want to be able to, move on with their lives. They want to be able to heal. And this puts us a little bit closer towards offering that type of healing.
Hi, Mayor. Want to ask you about a Chicago peace-based group. Metropolitan Peace Initiative says that DOJ canceled $2 million worth of community intervention grants. Want to ask you about the potential impacts on, violence intervention efforts this summer.
Yeah, the Trump administration continues to take all of its anger and animus out on the working people. Cities across America have been utilizing community-based organizations, particularly our CVI, Community Violence Interrupters, to be a part of that transformation. Now, we know just this past month, it's the safest month on record, the month of April, with the fewest amount of homicides. And this is a threat towards the type of communities that we're ultimately trying to build. Now, we're going to do our part as a city. As you know, we had the U.S. Conference of Mayors here was it this week? It seems like forever ago, but last Sunday into Monday and Tuesday, and cities across America are dealing with the type of threats that are no longer threats, that are real efforts to undermine community safety. We have to stand shoulder to shoulder as residents in the city and stand in lockstep with cities across America and superintendents and police chiefs to push the federal government to fund what actually is working. But it is very much a concern of ours. But but we're going to remain vigilant and focused as we continue to see homicides and shootings go down in the city of Chicago and investments that are going towards responding to domestic violence. We're not going to lose our way because we have someone in the White House who obviously does not value our humanity.
Okay, we can do off topics now. Just try to go quick. Yeah, just go one and done. We're going to try to get to everybody. All right?
You've known since December that Pedro Martinez is going to be leaving next month. How come it's taken so long for the city to publicly post the job description for the new CEO?
The job description is pretty straightforward. Someone who believes in our vision for sustainable community schools. Look, I've been a long-time advocate for the type of investments that we are seeing in the particular contract that we settled. Smaller class sizes, someone who's committed to ensuring that our veteran teachers are supported, someone who understands the value of having teachers' assistants and teaching Black history, protecting our LGBTQ and immigrant community. Ultimately, what that job is going to do is carry out the vision that I ran on, is having a school district that is financially stable and investing in our classroom.
Can I just kind of follow up on that just quickly? I mean, so what is the plan? I mean, will there be an interim CEO?
Yeah, the plan is to get a new CEO. The plan is to get a new CEO, and we'll do that.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Obviously, by now you're well aware of the situation with the Illinois Gaming Board halting the construction of Bailey's Casino. Can you tell me what concerns you have about, first of all, the long-term project, but also that a allegedly mob-connected firm was doing work on this casino?
Well, I'm very much concerned about this project being, interrupted. This is, an internal process and investigation that, we don't know the full scope or how long it's going to take. And I'm, going to remain hopeful that this investigation moves forward with some expediency and that, whatever vetting process that was utilized, that somehow, allowed this type of discovery to escape. Let's just hope that that is rectified. But, look, this is an important project for not just the city of Chicago, but for the state of Illinois. And, anytime we're stopping construction, that's going to be a concern for a mayor. And again, there's a litigating process that is internal, and, the hope and the expectation is that they come to some understanding of how, again, this was lost, and that we have a pathway moving forward to make sure that the people who are, working on these projects are fully vetted and they reflect the values of our city.
You believe this is an intentional oversight?
Yeah.
Now my off-topic question.
Sure.
We reporters talk to you before you talk to anyone in Springfield for those meetings. Can you give us an assessment of what you heard from the leadership and from the governor on what Chicago can expect?
Absolutely. So we've been having these conversations for months. Our budget director and our chief financial officer, along with my IGA team, have been in constant communication with the governor's office, the Senate president, and Speaker of the House. The asks that we have put forth, none of that has changed. We just wanted to make sure, in particular, the resources that the governor committed towards responding to our homelessness crises across the state of Illinois, that line item remains firm. Look, you don't take anything for granted. These alders can tell you just because an executive proposes something in a budget, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to agree with it. So it's very paramount for the city of Chicago to put a firm presentation forward to make sure that those resources are there. We talked about our categoricals, particularly around transportation, bilingual education, and special education. Right now, the reimbursement mechanism that has been used, that reimbursement we believe can be stronger, particularly at a time in which one of your colleagues mentioned about the threats, of course, that continue to loom at the federal level. There's a great deal of animus and spite towards public accommodations, but particularly education in particular. So there were very strong conversations around there. And my general assessment is that people know that the city of Chicago is moving in the right direction. Our investments are up, crime is down. This is going to take all of us to fight back against right-wing extremism in this country, to make the critical investments in the global capital of the world. So I feel positive and optimistic that the expectation that I had going into this session, that we will fulfill all of those.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey.
I've learned that a political group that opposes you and progressive allies and that says it will fight extremism has raised $10 million from 90 donors. What's your reaction to that, and what's your message to that wealthy group that seems to be gearing up to fight?
Well, my message is the same. I'm going to stand up and defend working people. The fact that ultra-rich folks who have had unfettered access to the fifth floor that has caused the type of economic peril that we are now working to rectify collectively as a city, the fact that they oppose me, that's actually not breaking news. It's no wonder, right, that you have, again, the ultra-wealthy in this city or around this region want to attack a working class man with a working class agenda. I'm going to remain firm as the most pro-worker city in America, paid time off, abolishing sub-minimum wage. But we've also made it very clear that we're open for business. We're just not for sale. $11 billion of new economic development last year, more than 2022 and 23 combined. $8 billion of new investments that are happening right now. One of the most diverse city councils in terms of leadership, one of the most, if not the most diverse administration in the history of Chicago. More women who are working in city government than we've seen. So it's no surprise that those ultra-rich individuals are mad at that. You know, the days of which rich white men rule the earth, that day is over. Now, of course, they want to try to get their turn again, but we're going to stand firm. This is an administration that is committed to black, brown, white, Asian, young, old, the intergenerational, multicultural movement that propelled a working class person to this office. Of course, that's the threat to the oligarchy. It's the same individuals that are trying to protect the White House. It's no wonder. They don't have a vision. They don't have a mission. They just want power back. And the people of Chicago have stood firm. 30 years of malfeasance, 2 years with economic development and growth where we've seen violent crime go down. So clearly it's not about public safety. It's not about housing. It's not about mental health, right? It's not about youth employment and workforce. It's not about education. We are better in every single aspect of this city. Now, have we done everything right? I'll say it like this. You don't have to be perfect in order for something to work. Ask my wife.
Hi, Mayor. With the vacant, or I guess not vacancy, but there's an interim leader of the CTA. You know, with the discussions on a reorg of regional transit, have you felt any pressure, had discussions with lawmakers, advocates, labor, about not moving forward with you know, a permanent leader there until all of that sorts itself out? You know, there may be changes to the makeup of the CTA board, the authority of the leader there on certain issues going forward.
Well, what I can say is, you know, my ongoing commitment to making sure that our transportation system is world-class and well-funded, that commitment remains, right? Ridership went up last year again, between buses and trains, 300 million riders. We're talking about an 11% or so increase year over year. Our hiring continues to go up. I mean, we're expanding our Better Streets for Buses, creating faster express buses. Commitment, of course, to making sure that we're working in tandem with the Chicago Police Department, as well as the security team. You know, look, the city of Chicago deserves its fair share in resources. That's what this work is ultimately about. We comprise of 87% of the ridership for these systems. And we do not get our equitable distribution of those resources. Now, are there ways in which we can collaborate and streamline our services? Absolutely, I'm open to that. You know, and the people of Chicago elected me to make decisions, not to wait. I remember when President Obama was president, and by no means am I comparing myself to him. God knows I'm not. What I will say is the legislative branch forced an executive to not use his executive authority, while at the same time you have someone who is using so-called executive authority that is blowing past the Constitution. I have the executive authority and the responsibility to lead in this moment. and waiting because someone feels uncomfortable or yet they want to apply pressure. I'm not going to succumb to the type of incorrigible behavior that oftentimes leaves black and brown and working people behind. And so we're going to continue to have conversations with advocates and board members and leaders and the General Assembly to ensure that our world-class city has a world-class transportation system. Thank
we
you
have
all
a final question up here. Then we'll allow Commissioner to make a statement, and then we'll take a group shot.
You got those numbers, okay.
Mayor, just back to Bally's for a quick second.
Sure.
The city building department shut down demolition earlier in December when construction materials were dumped into the Chicago River. Second work stoppage in a few months. Are you getting frustrated with the way Bally's has handled this?
Well, as I said earlier, I don't want to see construction stop. Look, when you're doing major and big things in the city of Chicago as we are, my administration is purposing to make sure that we get it right and that we do it well. Some of these projects, of course, we inherited, and we're grateful for the leadership that has provided these opportunities to expand in the city of Chicago. But absolutely, it becomes problematic when we slow down, stop, because of steps or measures that Bally's in and of itself should have been a little bit more careful. The hope and, of course, the expectation is that we get it right. Yeah. All right, Commissioner.
Speaking of not being perfect, I misspoke earlier. I've got like a dozen programs running through my mind. So to be clear, for this program, the program budget is expected to be about $450,000 annually over the course of the 2 years of the pilot for the program and program evaluation. Thank you.
Take a group shot. So speakers, if you guys could come together.